Welcome to Bloodlines Beastmarks Podcast, where we delve into the dark corners of folklore, myth, and legend, uncovering the stories that shaped our understanding of the creatures that haunt our nightmares. Today, we embark on a journey to explore the origins of two of the most iconic creatures to ever stalk the night, the vampire and the werewolf. Where do these creatures come from? How did they evolve into the supernatural beings we recognize today? And why do they continue to captivate our imaginations? Join us as we step back into the shadows and explore the origins of the night. To understand the vampire, we must first look at the myths and fears that gave rise to it. The vampire, as we know it today, is a creature of darkness, a blood-drinking monster that transcends death, living only to feast upon the living. But this is a modern conception, one shaped by centuries of evolution. The roots of the vampire stretch back into ancient history, long before the first vampire legends appeared in Europe. One of the earliest examples of a blood-drinking creature can be found in ancient Greek and Roman mythology. The Empusa, a creature from the underworld, was said to drink the blood of young men while they slept. The Empusa could shapeshift into various forms, seducing its victims into an early grave. But it wasn't just her predation that made her terrifying. It was the power of transformation. The Empusa was a shapeshifter, able to morph into whatever would draw in her prey. Another early figure in vampire folklore was Lamia, a once beautiful woman who, according to Greek legend, was transformed into a bloodthirsty monster after the goddess Hera cursed her. Lamia's monstrous form, like the Empusa, was often described as a seductive figure who preyed upon children, drawing their blood as a way of sustaining her cursed existence. This shift from the supernatural to a more humanized form is an important step in the vampire's development. Moving to the Middle Ages, we begin to see the vampire as a more recognizable entity, a creature that is undead, cursed to walk the earth and feed on the living. The vampire hysteria in Eastern Europe in the 17th and 18th centuries marks a pivotal point in this transformation. People feared that if a person died with certain signs, such as a bloated corpse or blood at the mouth, they might return from the grave as a vampire. These beliefs led to widespread practices of digging up graves, staking bodies through the heart, decapitating the dead, and burning the remains to prevent the return of these creatures. Much like the Empusa and Lamia, the vampire of the Eastern European tradition was not just a monster, it was a symbol of death, disease, and social anxiety. People believed that the vampire's bite could spread disease, particularly the plague, which ravaged Europe during this period. The fear of death and the unknown, the very fear of what happens when we die, was projected onto these creatures, giving birth to a creature that could never escape the grave. But it was not until the 19th century that the vampire truly entered the world of literature. Thanks to works like John Polidori's The Vampire and Bram Stoker's iconic Dracula. In these works, we see the vampire as a tragic figure, both seductive and monstrous, a creature that transcends death but must feed to survive. It is in these stories that the vampire begins to take on a more human quality. An immortal being, cursed by its own existence, forever yearning for freedom from its endless hunger. Now, let's turn our attention to the werewolf. Unlike the vampire, the werewolf embodies a different kind of terror, a terror rooted in transformation and the loss of control. Whereas the vampire is often depicted as a creature of intelligence and manipulation, the werewolf represents our fear of our own primal nature, our capacity to devolve into something less than human. The earliest stories of shape-shifting creatures can be found in ancient cultures around the world. The concept of transforming into an animal, particularly a wolf, appears in the myths of the Greeks and Romans. One of the earliest and most famous figures in Greek mythology is King Lycan, who, in a fit of arrogance, challenged the gods by serving them the flesh of his own son. In retribution, Zeus transformed Lycaon into a wolf, forever cursed to roam the earth in his new, animalistic form. Lycaon's punishment was not just physical. He was stripped of his humanity, forced to live as a creature of pure instinct. Similar myths can be found in the Norse traditions, where warriors known as berserkers would wear the pelts of wolves and bears to gain their strength and ferocity in battle. While these warriors were not truly werewolves in the sense we think of today, they were seen as individuals who could channel the power of the wolf in their fight. These early stories reflect a key theme of werewolf mythology: the desire to harness the power of the wolf, to tap into something wild, something untamed. But it wasn't until the Middle Ages that the werewolf truly became a figure of widespread fear and legend. In this time, a blend of superstition, Christianity, and the fear of witchcraft gave rise to the belief that some individuals could become werewolves through pacts with the devil or by invoking dark magic. In places like France and Germany, tales of werewolf sightings became common, and people would accuse others of being in league with the devil and transforming into wolves under the full moon. The werewolf's transformation is often depicted as a painful, uncontrollable process. It is the ultimate loss of human agency, a surrender to the animal within. This transformation has been depicted in countless stories, from the horrifying Wolfman films of the 1940s to the more sympathetic portrayals in modern fiction, where the werewolf is often torn between their human self and their savage instincts. But no matter the portrayal, the werewolf has always been a creature that symbolizes the fear of the wild, of losing control, and of becoming something other than human. Though vampires and werewolves are distinct creatures, they share much in common. Both embody human fears, and both have evolved over centuries to reflect our cultural anxieties. The vampire's immortality and the werewolf's transformation are two sides of the same coin. Both creatures are cursed, trapped in a cycle of violence and fear, unable to escape the nature of their existence. Interestingly, vampires and werewolves often appear in folklore together, with one creature being a foil to the other. In many legends, the vampire and the werewolf represent opposing forces. The vampire is cold, calculating, and eternal, while the werewolf is wild, untamed, and driven by animalistic impulses. These creatures often clash in myth, with the vampire's ability to charm and manipulate coming into direct conflict with the werewolf's brutal, primal power. In fact, these two creatures share a surprising number of similarities. Both are often linked to death and decay. Both are cursed, living in a state between life and death. Both represent the struggle between civilization and the wild, between humanity and the beast within. But while the vampire seeks to dominate and control the living, the werewolf is often depicted as a tragic figure, struggling with the duality of its existence. As we trace the evolution of these creatures in future episodes, we'll explore how they became entwined in the cultural fabric of the world. From the early folklore to their dramatic reinventions in literature and film, the vampire and werewolf have come to symbolize much more than just our fear of the dark. They reflect our most fundamental struggles with identity, control, mortality, and the wild forces that lurk just beneath the surface of our civilized selves. As we conclude today's exploration of the origins of the vampire and werewolf, we can see how these creatures have grown and evolved over thousands of years. From blood-drinking demons of ancient Greece to immortal beings of modern fiction, the vampire continues to captivate our imagination. And the werewolf, once a symbol of uncontrollable rage, has transformed into a more complex and tragic figure, torn between man and beast. But the legacy of these creatures is not just one of fear, it is one of understanding. Through their myths and stories, we confront our own deepest fears, the fear of death, the fear of losing control, and the fear of the wild, untamed side of our nature. Vampires and werewolves represent the darkness within us all, the part of us that struggles to stay civilized, to stay human. Join us next time on Bloodlines and Beastmarks Podcast, where we'll continue our exploration of these legendary creatures. We'll delve deeper into their evolution in literature, film, and pop culture, and how they've shaped our understanding of the supernatural and the unknown. For more stories that delve into the mysterious and magical realms of mythology and folklore, don't forget to visit Mythic Cosmos. There, you'll find more videos on creatures, legends, and ancient myths from every corner of the world. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the origins of the night. Until next time, stay in the light if you can.